As I stepped in the office that morning, a heavy feeling settled in my chest, a culmination of 15 years of hard work, late nights, and unwavering dedication to a company that no longer valued me. The familiar hum of office chatter was replaced by an unsettling silence, one that felt like a storm brewing just out of sight. My boss, Mr. Whitmore, barely glanced in my direction, his demeanor cold and distant. I had sensed this moment creeping closer for weeks, the anticipation tightening around me like a noose. When he finally called me into his office, I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what I knew was coming. The once welcoming beige walls of his office felt stifling, adorned with framed awards and certificates, many of which bore my fingerprints, the projects I had led, and the successes I contributed to. There was a bitter irony in that realization, but I pushed it aside. "Amelia, can I see you for a moment?" he asked, gesturing for me to take a seat across from his desk. I smoothed my skirt and maintained a calm facade, despite the whirlwind of emotions within me. Mr. Whitmore cleared his throat, his eyes finally meeting mine with a hint of discomfort. "I want to start by expressing our appreciation for your dedication to the company." This platitude was the precursor to the blow I had been bracing for. I nodded, recognizing the familiar script that would soon follow. "We have been reviewing our operational strategy, and unfortunately, we are making some difficult decisions. Given recent changes, we decided to move in a different direction. Your role has been reevaluated." The words hung in the air, heavy with finality. I tilted my head slightly, letting the gravity of his statement sink in. "You're letting me go?" His lips tightened, a thin line of regret forming. "It's not personal, Amelia. This is a restructuring." I raised a hand, cutting through the rehearsed speech. "Mr. Whitmore, let's not waste time pretending. I've known this was coming for weeks." A flicker of surprise crossed his face, quickly masked by a professional veneer. I pressed on, my voice steady. "I noticed the changes, the meetings I was excluded from, the projects reassigned, the vague performance reviews. You and the others may think you blindsided me, but I am always prepared." For the first time, he looked slightly unnerved. "Amelia, I leaned forward, clasping my hands together, my heart racing. "Before you continue, let me clarify. I did not sit idly by waiting for this moment. You may be letting me go, but I have ensured that I will land on my feet." His fingers drummed nervously against the desk. "What exactly are you saying?" I couldn't help but smile, knowing I held the upper hand. "Let's just say you and the company are in for quite the surprise." He swallowed hard, his confidence visibly shaken. Shifting uncomfortably in his chair, he urged, "If you have something to say, I suggest you be clear about it." I exhaled slowly, leaning back in my chair, crossing one leg over the other, allowing a moment of silence to amplify the weight of my next words. "I have spent 15 years building this company," I said, my voice calm yet firm. "I have given it my time, my ideas, and my loyalty, and in return, I receive a dismissal disguised as a strategic decision. It's frankly insulting." He opened his mouth to respond, but I interrupted, fueled by the fire of indignation. "So I planned ahead. While you and the board were quietly phasing me out, I was making my own arrangements. Did you think I would just walk away with nothing?" His eyes narrowed, suspicion creeping into his expression. "What are you implying?" I reached into my bag and pulled out a neatly organized folder, placing it on his desk with deliberate care. "This is what I'm implying." He hesitated before picking it up, flipping through the pages. With each second that passed, the color drained from his face. "These are," he stammered, the realization dawning on him, "company data, financial reports, internal communications, all perfectly legal, of course." I added, anticipating any accusations of wrongdoing. "I'll only access what I had clearance for, but what I found," I leaned in, lowering my voice conspiratorially, "is quite damning." He snapped the folder shut, a look of panic in his eyes. "This is confidential information. And yet it's filled with discrepancies." I countered, my confidence surging. "Misallocated funds, overstated profits, dubious partnerships." Shall I go on? His jaw clenched, anger and fear battling for dominance. "You have no idea what you are meddling with." "Oh, but I do," I replied with a smirk. While you were planning my exit, I ensured that if I went down, I wouldn't be going alone. For the first time since I walked into the office, Mr. Whitmore's facade cracked, revealing the fear simmering beneath his authoritative exterior. I stood up, straightening my blouse, exuding a calm confidence. "I'm giving you a choice," I stated, my voice steady. "Either you compensate me fairly for my departure, severance benefits, and an airtight letter of recommendation, or this information finds its way to the right people. The authorities, the media, investors." His grip tightened around the folder, and I could see the wheels turning in his mind. "You're blackmailing me," he accused, disbelief coloring his tone. I prefer to call it leverage. A silence stretched between us, charged with tension. Finally, he exhaled, running a hand through his graying hair. "Give me some time." I nodded, my resolve unyielding. "You have 24 hours. With that, I turned and walked out his office, leaving him to grapple with his thoughts and the precarious position he had found himself in. I had foreseen this day, and what he didn't realize was that it had arrived on my terms. The next 24 hours dragged on, filled with a tense anticipation. I remained at home, vigilant, my eyes glued to my phone for any sign of Mr. Whitmore's response. By noon the following day, the familiar buzz of my phone broke the silence. It was a message. "Amelia, meet me in my office. We need to talk." A smirk crept onto my lips. I had him right where I wanted him. When I arrived, the atmosphere in his office was eerily quiet, the blinds drawn to shut out the world. Mr. Whitmore appeared worse than before, his tie loosened, beads of sweat forming on his forehead as he fidgeted in his chair. I took my seat without waiting for an invitation, my heart quickening with the prospect of victory. "I assume you have an answer for me?" I prompted, my tone casual yet authoritative. His fingers drummed restlessly against the desk, betraying his anxiety. After a long moment, he exhaled sharply. "You win." The words were bitter, a reluctant admission of defeat. I could see it etched across his face. He despised conceding, but he understood the dire consequences of not complying. "I have arranged for a severance package," he continued, sliding a document across the desk. 6 months' salary, full benefits, and a signed letter of recommendation. I picked up the paper, scanning it carefully, weighing my options. "Make it a year's salary," I replied, my gaze unwavering. His jaw tightened, outrage flickering in his eyes. "That is—" "You can afford it," I interrupted, my voice firm. "Considering how much money has been siphoned off in creative accounting." I locked eyes with him, unyielding. 1 year, or I make a few calls. A muscle in his cheek twitched, and the tension in the room crackled with unspoken words. After what felt like an eternity, he sighed, defeated. "Fine. 1 year." I watched as he amended the contract, his pen pressing hard enough to nearly tear the paper. He slid it back to me, and I examined every word before signing with a sense of finality. Leaning back in my chair, I couldn't resist a teasing remark. "I thought you would put up more of a fight." Whitmore exhaled, rubbing his temples in frustration. "You think you're the first person to back me into a corner?" He let out a humorless chuckle, a hint of respect creeping into his tone. "You're just the first to do it so effectively." I shrugged, a sense of pride swelling within me. 15 years in this company taught me how to play the game. You should have seen this coming. The silence that followed was heavy, filled with the weight of our shared history. Finally, he broke the stillness, asking, "What are you going to do now?" I smiled, slipping the signed agreement into my bag, feeling a rush of exhilaration. "That's the best part," I replied, standing up. "You'll find out soon enough." With that, I turned and walked out of his office for the last time, leaving behind not just my job, but the illusion of loyalty that had tethered me to Whitmore and Company. As I stepped out of the building for the final time, the crisp afternoon air filled my lungs, lifting the weight that had clung to me for years. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A call. I glanced at the screen and smiled before answering. "Is it done?" the voice on the other end asked, an undercurrent of excitement in their tone. "Yes," I replied, my voice filled with victorious certainty. "It is done." "Good," the voice responded. "We are ready whenever you are." I looked back at the towering corporate building. knowing that inside, Whitmore was likely still grappling with the reality of his position, questioning how he had lost control so swiftly. But this was never just about revenge. It was about reclaiming my power, about proving that I was never just another disposable employee. In the months leading up to this moment, I had been quietly assembling a team, securing funding, and preparing to launch my own consulting firm. The best part? Some of Whitmore's most valuable clients were already interested. They had seen my work, trusted me for years, and were eager to follow me into this new venture. As I hailed a cab, I allowed myself a final glance at the past before letting it go. The game had changed, and this time, I was the one calling the shots. The future stretched out before me, filled with possibilities and a renewed sense of purpose.